How perfect should my product be before I can start talking to investors? Do I focus on products or my operations? Would investors really be interested in me if I am not generating revenue yet for my startup? Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Business live show. I'm Naili Makangu from Athena Leaders, your host for today. I am excited and delighted to be able to support you design your happy and productive workplace playground, especially if you're working in a startup or small business. Today is a special episode for us. We've went around the web, we've listened to you, and we've also received a lot of questions from startup founders who have reacted to our messages online. A lot of the discussion this week and the questions that we received were on products and product development, finding the product market fits, and we thought, let's have an interactive session and answer those questions. For those who are new to the shows, I will remind you of how we like to interact. This is not a monologue, it's a conversation with you. If you are watching this on replay, you're not missing out. Make sure that you send us your thoughts using the hashtag Athena Leaders. Do like, subscribe, and share the news to everybody. So today we're really gonna answer the three questions I mentioned in my opening, and they're really focused about products and what should startups do when they start growing or scaling their business, and also this idea of investments and how do we bring them in. Today is also a very special day for me. It was my first conference. Today is day 3 of the South Summit, a conference based in Madrid that is designed to raise an awareness of the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem in Madrid and in Spain, in addition to raising awareness of the great work that's been done in terms of startups all over the world. There are more than 3,000 people that turned out. We had investors, a lot of pitches, and it was an amazing, amazing show. So the other thing that I really loved about that was that it was the first time that I could attend face-to-face at the conference. I forgot how exciting and exhilarating, a long day, but it was really, really interesting. And in fact, some of the inspirations and some of the questions that we have for you today also came from the question that I had yesterday as I was networking and connecting with a lot of startups and investors at different stages of their journey. One thing in particular, before we go into product, and one thing I really, really want to talk about and I found fascinating was the fact that when we talk about running businesses and the journey that startup goes, it's a lot of people really underestimate of the challenges it takes to grow your business, whether you are a tech startup or not. It's a journey that doesn't really depend on terms of age, and it's really about the experience that you have to bring. And at South Summit, it was amazing to see a lot of young people, a young generation, really rising up to the challenge of designing tech, not just for different areas for our lives, but also for sustainability. So today I wanted to give a big shout out to every young person out there that have the courage to develop and grow their own businesses, and particularly to one of my marketing managers who's been doing a fantastic job, and without who this show would not be possible. So I really wanted to start by acknowledging the great work. A lot of the time when we talk about innovation, startup, and funding, we look at people with years of experience. Yet, when I was at the conference, I was excited to see a lot of young people, the young generation coming through, especially when we're dealing with the pandemic. Now, let's jump straight into what we wanted to talk about today, product. And the first question of the day, how perfect should my product be before I can start talking about it to potential clients or investors? Now, this is something that a lot of startups struggle with, especially for startups who are either perfectionists and want everything to be absolutely perfect, or startups that come from a tech background where they want all the pieces of the puzzle to come together before they can share it to other people, or even startups that are led by people who are worried about sharing their intellectual property, sharing some aspect of what they are doing, so that they're worried about, the competition might steal my ideas or something like that. So they might hold back and not really talk about their business or what they are building. So for all of the startups and anybody else thinking about even starting a really, really early ideas, my first question to you is this: How quickly can you start testing your ideas in the market? Remember, the journey to product market fit is one of the most important journey that a startup can do. The ideas that you have today when it comes to your startup, your vision will evolve and change. It will be guided by the market, guided by your investors, guided by the customers. Of course, you will still end up with what you wanted to build initially, but the final product will be different. The earliest you can start bringing customers and you can start talking about your product, the quickest you can start shaping that journey. I always remind startup or founders to think about building a product, even product managers especially, building a product as if it was a baby. You are growing a child. You might want to have a child who will one day turn into a tennis player. But that's definitely something that I would think about. So at the age of 3, I'm sure that if I had a child, I would probably give them the first racket so that they can play. But you also need to understand that the child will develop different interests, and maybe one day they will surprise you in another way. Of course, it's not as a drastic change when it comes to product, but it's the same ideas in terms of giving your product the best chances of growth by being able to bring other people to give you the feedback so that it can grow in the direction that you want, but also deviate where you need to on your way to the product market fit. So then if I don't have to have a perfect product, so how can I start speaking about my products, and how do I know where to stop? So here are a way, someone I work with my clients when I advise them on how to start. Let's go back to the main question. How quickly can you start testing your ideas? Is it possible to create a lovely PowerPoint slides or whatever tools that you use with drawings and a mock-up that you can start using really early on to even start talking to trusted clients, friends, or customers? So if you can do that, then start. Ask the community and start seeing how you can start tweaking your products, your business plan, and everything that you're doing in the background. The other way would be to create an early prototype based on high fidelity drawings, for example. There are tools like Figma where you can create a clickable prototype. So in terms of actually building charts on the screen, or you can design the charts in a way that you can go on a web page and you can start clicking on different areas that show you the customer journey and what the representation of what you are building will be. This way, you could approach clients, customers, so that they, while as you're explaining your ideas, they can also have something visual. And again, that's a lot cheaper in terms of development. And some of those tools and techniques do not even require a high level of coding involved. So if those ideas start, then remember that the people invest in you, they invest in your team, they invest on the scalability of what you are proposing. The quicker you can go to market and start talking to clients, the quicker you can change what you are doing, you can adapt, and you can provide a product that's stronger. And of course, depending on the area, you might decide that you need to build a prototype. You need to develop in terms of coding, whether you do it yourself, whether you do it with some of your, let's say, co-founders who have technical skills, or you use an offshore development team. Even then, if you do decide that road, do remember what is the smallest amount of coding that I need to do to create the story. You don't need to code the full system. Some of them could still be a clickable prototype, whilst the other one has been developed to some extent as well. But remember, it's all about making sure that you have a clear roadmap from the beginning, understanding what your MVP will be, and understanding what the MVP of the MVP will be, and build a roadmap so that you are not overspending. Anything that you create or anything that you put out there needs to be useful to you and needs to have the purpose of driving more feedback and moving conversation forward with potential customers and investors. So I hope this really helps. And before I forgot, there's actually one other hack that I also suggest to other people. Now, this one is if your startup is going towards not just a tech product or platform, but there might be a service that will go on top of that. For that, you might actually think of finding a way of mimicking what your product do using very basic techniques. And I've seen that used in other startups, and I even talked to a startup yesterday that is using that. I'm not going to go into that startup because it was kind of great ideas, and I don't want to I didn't ask for the authorization to share that. But one of the things I've seen it being done was in the recruitment industry. So we look at a niche area. So for example, if you wanted to attract people who have a hybrid working experience, and rather than building a full software or a full platform, web platform that will allow you to find companies looking for hybrid working leaders and find the hybrid working contractors per se, you might just do a very simple example where you've got Google Forms where you get the information from the tool. You have a team in the background that do the matching and the interviews and connecting. And eventually you're doing kind of this, you become this halfway middle guy and helping people connect. Of course, the full product can grow and will develop in the future, but it's a very, very quick way of knowing if you have what you need to be able to enter the market. I've seen this done as well in the rental industry. We talked a little bit about rental and startup last week, and where, for example, if you have a co-living, again, it's a new way for digital nomads to find places to live when they go abroad, and you have digital nomads looking for quality co-livings. You can use the similar things, test it, and if you have the viability in terms of market and people are really excited about it, you can slowly build a platform behind that. But at least you have something where you can start gathering data, start gathering customers, and you can move forward. So those are just a few ideas just to show, and I hope it helps you to feel a bit more comfortable and start thinking differently about how perfect your software needs to be before going to clients. And remember, your product will evolve on your search to product market fit, so don't be too attached to what you have in the beginning. And main question for me is, how quickly can you start testing your ideas in the market? What do you think about what we shared so far? Do please interact with us, and even if you're watching the replay, make sure that you comment and even online using hashtag #AthenaLeaders, and we'll be happy to continue the conversation with you. If you are live, do put your thoughts in the chat, and we love, especially I love, after the show going to the video and just enjoying ice cream and whilst watching the comments and the conversation that's been going on whilst I was live. Let's look at the second question: products versus operation. Do you recommend for startup that are focused on product development first, or the operation part of the business? How do you kind of mix the two? This is also a very, very interesting question that we've been asked by some clients and also by the community out there. What do we focus first, and how do we move from one to the other? The first thing I would say, and again, it depends on the area that you're working with. If you wanted something more personalized, then do please get in touch with us. We can have a virtual coffee, and I promise that any virtual cakes will be on me. When we look at a very tech product that you're building, I guess, other area product would be the same, but focusing on tech products, the products or getting to product market fit, as I've said earlier, is very important. So focus on your product first. And again, when you start, your team will be quite small. So some of the organizational challenges in terms of communication and organization might be a bit low. You might struggle with prioritizations and MVP and roadmap. But again, that falls more into a product development perspective rather than a operation perspective. The main idea, especially if you are bootstrapping or you are within the early stage, is really to invest your energy and time into growing the product, and of course also starting the conversations with potential customers and investors, but not so much of the operation. But then, how do we start? When should we start thinking about the business or the operation side? As you're getting closer to product market fit, of course, you will need to move and start thinking about the operation. If you are launching your MVP out there, or the first kind of cut of your business, you are bringing a lot of customers or important customers on the platform to be able to test and use it. Yes, some aspect of that will be dealt with by the product team, but you also need to have an operations team that, or at least someone that will start thinking strategically on how do we retain and support those customers that are interacting with us, so that we can roll them on to, let's say, paid plans if they are not paying, or give them a grandfather deal or something like that. So you can really give them the experience that they need so that they can continue as well. So that's when you might start thinking about bringing the operation. And lastly, is if you've already have funding, or the moment you get some funding for funding coming up, and you need to kind of increase the engagement with clients, yes, you definitely need to start with your operations. Another areas to look at as well is how quickly you are growing your team. So if you are working 5 people or maybe up to 10, as I said before, communication is slightly easier. And if you are struggling with some aspect of those things, you might, and you don't have someone within the C-suite or the organization that is strong from an operations perspective to put a bit of order in terms of systems and processes that you are doing, then consider having an advisor, or maybe someone like a consultant or contractor that you can use at different intervals. You might not need them fully in your business at that point yet. You can kind of collaborate with them. And it's really when you start bringing in customers and you start thinking about relaunching that project or a product, now what, that you need to start ramping up on your operations. And obviously the rate at which you do that depends on the budget, how much funding you have, how many customers that you're working with as well. And I hope this answers your questions. If you have a bit more, or if you want to have an in-depth conversation on this, please do let me know. And if you're already at that stage and start feeling the pain of not having enough time as a CEO or a founder to kind of look at everything, you need a bit of support, let's have a chat, as I'll be glad to kind of help you. Sometimes I find as well, startup might not need someone full-time, but they might need someone to just come in and give the team a little bit of training or a little bit of guidance and support on how to set up the communication, the project management, the strategy planning and execution, and then they can just pick it up and go with it. So if you are really early stage and it's the operation that you're struggling with, you don't need to have someone full-time. You can just have a chat, and I can help you get you set on your way, or you can work with someone that does similar thing as me, and they can get you going as well. Now, we are swiftly moving to the third and last question of the day, which really linked to the previous discussion. And this one is about investors. Would investors invest in a pre-revenue company? Is it important for you to already have some kind of investment before moving in? As I said before, please do let us know your thoughts, even if you're watching on the replay, #AthenaLeaders, and we'll be happy to engage with you. If you are a startup who wants to have us answer questions live, but might not want to be recognized by other people, do send us questions privately. I'm on LinkedIn, and I will answer questions live. And don't worry, we won't mention your name either. Now, even when you start looking at investors, the first thing you have to understand is that there are many different types of investors. And no, you don't need to generate revenue first before having investors. It's really about understanding. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on that, because this could be an episode on its own. It depends on which level you are as your startup. What are your goals? What kind of investors are out there? And what are the criteria, the impact, and the consequences of working with different types of startups? And plus, another thing as well to bear in mind is that investment has a lot of different meaning. A lot of startups that in the early days will have a funding round, and most of the people who are invested will be families or friends, right? So they are still treated as investors. Those are the people who believe in you. They know your ability, and they love what you are about to create. And because you already have that relationship, it might be a lot easier for them to invest rather than larger companies. In the middle, you might have accelerators or incubators that will give you the support to help you to start your business, to start your startup along the initial journey. And with those people as well, the accelerators or incubators, they might take a stake in your company. So they do in a way also work as investors. A different type of investors will be equity, so sweat equity. So you might have people within your company that gives you that swap, rather than giving you money, they swap their skills for sweat equity in your business. And of course, you get to the bigger investors, what most people think about when they talk about investors. We have like the angel investors, the VCs, and more. So it's really important to understand the level, for example, having a VC investors and angel investors, and incubators, and everybody, the different type of investments will bring different opportunities to your business, different pressure to your business. As such, it's important when considering these questions, don't really think about just being pre-revenue or post-revenue. Think about clarifying your proposition, because that's how you attract investors in the first place. Think about your scalability of your ideas. How quickly you're going to get to product market fit. What is your journey to product market fit? And your team. Think about your business plan, your business case, and get that all nailed. One final advice I will give on this, and again, remember that finding investors is really similar to finding new clients. You need to nurture them really early on. You want them to get to know you and build a relationship. We work with people, we attract people in our organization, and investors as well invest not just on the product, but also on people as well. So even if you think that you might not be ready for the big guys, start understanding, finding, building connection with them. Go to pitch event and listen to how other startups are pitching, because then that will give you some ideas on what investors at different level of organization need. I hope you really enjoyed today. I've got one final question or one final challenge for you before we get off. But again, we looked at really this idea of products and how you can create, whether you need to create the perfect products. We look at product versus operations and how to bring investors in. If you've missed any of those and you're quite excited, do please go back and watch the full thing. And also remember to interact with us, subscribe, like, give us your feedback on the content, on the show, and we always want to improve and grow the community with you. Do keep an eye out, as we have a lot of fantastic startups that have signed up to come on the show, and we are in the middle of getting all of them lined up so that we can bring even more experience and stories on the shows for you as well. Now, the final question before I go, and I'm going to leave you with that. How quickly can you start testing your ideas in the market? Let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.